Hey there, so I got part 4 of the Shadows of the Galaxy card review. I really was hoping that these would get a little shorter. I only waited 1 week, but we've got 35 new cards this week, mostly because they revealed the contents of the entire starter sets. So I'm going to go through the cards. Again, I'll spend more time on cards that I think are more in the constructed premier vein and less on like the draft cards, but I'll go through all of them. So number 1, Grief Karga is a 2-cost heroic card. It's a 2/2, has a when played, search the top 5 cards for an upgrade and draw it. So similar to some other cards we've seen like Omega, which does this for clones. We've got Mon Mothma from the first set, which does it for rebels. This one seems a little worse to me because I just can't imagine you're going to pump so many upgrades into a deck, even if you're playing like something Mandalorian focused. You just can't have most of your deck be upgrades. So the chance for this to whiff completely go up. It's still drawing you a card enough of the time, theoretically. So if that's the case, and if there's some really busted upgrades, and if the whole deck you're playing revolves around upgrades, it might be playable. But overall, I'm not very high on this. Criminal Muscle is a 1-cost 2/1 that has a when played, return a non-unique upgrade to its owner's hand. So this can come in, blow up a shield, blow up an experience, bounce. Like most lightsabers, I think. Well, some of them are unique, so not all of them. But I can't bounce the unique ones. I think the most interesting thing about this card is that it's a 1-cost Underworld card, which works really well with MClunky, a card I'm very high on and talked about in a previous review. I think if this is going to see play, it's likely because of that synergy, and it'll likely be in a very aggressive yellow deck because that might want 1-cost cards. Overall, the power level on this isn't super high, but because of that synergy and the situational use of its ability, it might be useful. Another card that it might work with would be like the Pirated Starfighter, right? Like any 1-cost cards go up a bit in value if you're going to be playing like this bounce synergy. Number 3 is a Frontier Trader. It's a 3-cost 2/2. Fringe Jawa. So far, those traits don't matter. When played, return a resource you control to its owner's hand. If you do, put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. Remember that whenever a resource comes into play, it'll come in exhausted. So it's not like this will... It's not like you can use one of the resources you use to pay for this and then get it ready. However, this is basically drawing you a card. It's a 2/2 for 3 that draws a card. That card is a resource you played. I think that's actually kind of decent. It lets you like more aggressively put situational cards into your resource pool that you might need later. You're still paying 3 for a 2/2, which is very much below rate and might be the death knell for this card. But the effect is actually pretty strong. It's like in my opinion, like you think of Mission Briefing, which is a 3-cost that draws 2. Well, this is a 3-cost that draws 1, but also plays a 2/2, right? So it's still like 2 cards of value. That card you draw might be pretty relevant though, because you know what's in your resource pool. So this has a little potential for like late game grindy games. All right, Dr. Pershing is a 2-cost blue villain. It's a 0/5 Imperial. It has an action to exhaust it, deal 1 damage to a friendly unit to draw a card. So, I mean, it can hurt himself. So he can't like draw cards off of himself. This is a very, very, very slow draw engine. I don't think it's that powerful personally. I think it's just too slow and action intensive. There's a lot of upside here. I mean, you can draw a billion cards off of this, right? If the damage you're dealing is also turning some stuff up, so maybe we think Krennic, where like the self damage, you're also buffing a unit. That's interesting. But so far in the current game, I still think these like engines that we're talking about, whether it's this or tech, we talked about that from a previous review with like turning all your smuggle cards into all your resource cards into smuggle cards, or other late game engines that completely revolve around card advantage, so far have not seemed to be particularly powerful. I'm going to start a little low on this guy and see if like a meta slows down significantly where we can spend a bunch of time just drawing and dirtling. Then this might be actually pretty powerful. Village Protectors, 3-cost heroic blue unit. It's got Sentinel and Shielded. 2/2 Sentinel Shielded is a bit annoying. I mean, we know that there's like the 2-Force shielded that was sometimes played with like Chewbacca to like temporarily give it Sentinel. This comes with the pre-built Sentinel. I think mostly this isn't very good, except in one situation I've been thinking about with the new Boba Green Heroic Leader. Because this comes in with keywords, they can buff themselves. So the turn you play them, they can be a 3/2 Sentinel shielded. Now, all of a sudden, 3, that's actually really appealing to me. That means that most of the units that your opponent might be playing on turn 1 will now die if they attack into this. It might mean that they just have to take a turn off from attacking you. And then the next turn, you play another keyworded unit. Because Boba's ability lets you place the +1 buff on any unit you play. You put it back on this. This is again a 3/2 shielded Sentinel. On turn 3, that's still pretty strong. It still will require 2 attacks to get through. It'll still hit back for 3 twice. I think in that deck, if Boba Green is becomes a decent deck, I think this potentially could see play there. All right, new leader, Lando Calrissian. He is a really interesting one. So he's a 4-cost deploy. So the second one we have now after Sabine. His front side ability is an action to exhaust. You may play a card using its smuggle ability. It will cost 2 less. And then you defeat a resource you own and control. So he deramps you to cheat out a card. It's the same exact ability on his deploy side, except now it's just an action. It doesn't require an attack. It's just like when he's in play, you can action and then use that. So what are we thinking to do with this? Obviously, we're trying to cheat out at powerful smuggle cards. We haven't seen very many. There are going to be 2 in this review, particularly Millennium Falcon and Zori, which we'll get to, that work really well with his ability. But basically, we need smuggle cards that aren't more expensive when they have smuggle, but they have like maybe other downsides when they smuggle in, so that the cost stays low, right? It's not really interesting for me if we got like really expensive smuggle cards that are just like, oh, it's a 4/4 that costs 8, and now it'll be a 4/4 that costs 6 when you smuggle it in, and it'll blow up one of your resources. That's not what we're talking about. We want powerful, cheaper smuggle abilities that actually cheat into play a powerful unit. We're going to get a couple of those, which we'll talk about. A few things to note. If you use his leader ability on turn 3, when you have 4 resources, you will deramp yourself and you will no longer be able to deploy your leader. So if you want to deploy, you're going to need to deploy first and then use the action to do the smuggle, which does put you a little bit at risk for removal because you're not usually going to be able to action churn as much as, say, a Sabine does. So it's a consideration. The other thing is you can use the card you're smuggling in to pay for itself. So you've got like a 4-cost smuggle ability, or let's say a 3-cost smuggle. You use the ability, you pay 3, including the card that has the smuggle. You play that card, and then you still have an unused resource. And there's a little bit of a non-synergy with specifically a green card. It's the smuggle card that gives a unit ambush. The name of it escapes me right now. I think it starts with timely, but it has a smuggle cost of 2, which theoretically would work really well with this because it would cost 0. However, I was informed that unfortunately is a little bit of a non-bow because when you play that card, it immediately leaves the smuggle zone, which means you have lost a resource, and then you would have to immediately pay for whatever it is you're going to ambush in. Thus, you're really only getting a 1 discount off of that card instead of a 2 discount. Makes it a little worse. All in all, I'm actually very excited about this leader. I think it's opening a really interesting puzzle. I think the ability is very strong. Like, cheating out cards is really powerful. It's going to come down a lot to how good the smuggle payoffs are. I think we've got a couple really good ones, but so far, other than them, I think mostly we're on the low end of the power level. But we've got only 1 legendary revealed so far. There's going to be like 15 more. I'm sure some of them will have smuggle, a bunch of rares. I think we're going to get more things to do with this guy, and it'll be interesting. All right, Smuggler's Aid is a 1-cost heroic card. It heals 3 from your base. It's got smuggle for 3. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's repair with smuggle, which is better than repair. but how much better than Repair? Not much. All right, Millennium Falcon. So this is one of the ones we're talking about for Lando. It's a 6 cost heroic yellow card. It's a 5/5. If you play it from your hand, it has ambush. So the front side of this is a 5/5 ambush for 6 in space, which is decent. The real interesting thing here is the smuggle. The smuggle is still 6. So this is what I'm talking about, where the smuggle is not just like more expensive. What happened here is the card loses ambush when you smuggle it, which is worse. But with Lando, when you make this cost 2 less, now it's a 4 cost 5/5 in space. You can play on turn 3, you can play this card with his ability. That is an absolute beating against a lot of decks. There are not very many good answers for this card outside of Takedown on that turn or even on the next couple turns. And that is a very important part. I think if this Lando deck is any good, in part be because this card is in it. Outside of Lando decks, I think it's interesting because it still has that smuggle ability at 6, which is not like when you smuggle this in, you're not paying a card for it. So a 6 cost 5/5 in space that also essentially draws you a card is also not bad. Might work in like Han decks who also ramp, who also sometimes need a fallback plan for when their Han gets disrupted and he doesn't go to 7 resources. So this might be an interesting card there to just play into your resource zone and have some backup plans. I think this card is pretty strong. All right, the Client, 3 cost blue villain card. It's a 2/5 with a shield. It's an Imperial. It's an official. Official's important for Palpatine right now to turn on Emperor's Royal Guard. All right, what else? It's got an action to exhaust. Choose a unit for this phase. It gains bounty heal 5 from base. So you throw a bounty on a unit, you kill that unit, you heal 5. I think similarly to the healing bounty that I talked about, I think it's getting a little... I mean, I can't say overrated. I don't know exactly what the pulse on these like bounties are or this guy is. I just think because you're spending your action to do these bounties that then heal you, well, the unit that you were going to kill already hit you. So it negates a lot of the healing potential as opposed to just, killing the unit flat out, preventing its attack. Now, this stays in play. It's annoying to kill, and it can do this over and over again. So that's like really where the upside is. I think that's pretty strong, actually. I think being able to like theoretically heal 5 every turn, even if the unit first attacks you, it's almost like you're negating the unit's attack every turn and probably healing a little bit extra, especially against aggressive decks. The shield makes this guy annoying, right? Like they need to attack at least twice into it, but he's got 5 health. He's got some power too, which means it's not like the Doctor Pershing, which was a 0/5. So if they really want to kill it, it's not really going to cost them much. This will hit back. He's got the official trait. I think this package is pretty strong. I think I think that this could definitely see some play in control decks and like kind of be a focus, especially in like a Palpatine deck. It'll be interesting to see. All right, Queel. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know though. It's a 2 cost blue hero. It's a 2/3. It's got Restore 1. On attack, discard a card from your deck. If it shares an aspect with your base, return it to your hand. So naturally, we're thinking mono blue here, right? Then it's basically on attack, draw a card. It's got Restore 1. It's still a 2 cost 2/3 in my head, which is still just not a stat line I'm very happy with. It's a decent value engine. It's got like the on attack, draw a card. It's got the Restore 1. It's got things. It's just still a 2/3 when all is said and done. If you're going first, that's obviously better because you can maybe immediately cash in and draw a card. If you've built your deck into a monocolored deck or a very heavy single color deck. I mean, you can play this in like blue-red and most of your deck can be red and then you'll probably draw cards. But I think mostly I would lean towards monocolored. Him not having any good traits, at least as of yet, also weakens it a little bit. I'm not very high on this because of the stat line. I just have been mostly unhappy playing 2/3s so far in Star Wars Unlimited. And we'll see if that changes. All right, Van Brace Grapple Shot. It's an upgrade that attaches to a non-vehicle. It gives +2/+2 on attack, exhaust the defender. I think this card's really bad. I mean, you need to be attacking the unit to exhaust the unit, but you're also like buffing yourself. So essentially you're like attacking big things that you weren't already going to kill just to exhaust them. I think that's just a trap. You can't even put this on vehicles, so that lowers the upside. I think I would just like rather play Academy Training, which is a textless +2/+2 that at least goes on vehicles. Not interested here. Outland Tie Vanguard is a 2-cost green villain. It's a 2/1. When played, you may give an experience token to another unit that costs 3 or less, another being key, because this would be absolutely crazy if you could give it to itself. It'd be a turn 1, 3/2 in space. Having said that, I think it's still decent. It's like a mini wing leader in a sense. I think that it costing 2 is still just awkward because it's not really a turn 1 play, but then is it a turn 2 play? Well, it is in some decks when you have something to do with the extra resource. So like Tarkin, for instance, you can play this and then give it an experience or give the other thing that you already buffed an experience. I think in like a Grand Moff deck, which it looks to me so far like it'll probably want to go pretty wide with a lot of cheap units, this might be pretty interesting. All in all, I kind of wish it was a 3-cost that just had like better stats, but it's not. And I still think it's pretty decent. Yeah. Remnant Reserves. 4-cost green villain card. Search the top 5 cards of your deck for up to 3 units, reveal them, and draw them. 4-cost, draw 3. Similar to like Tarkin, the unit, that one that's 2/3, it searches the top 8 for Imperials and draws 2. That's also kind of like a 3-for-1 because he himself is a unit that comes into play. So he's a 2/3 that draws 2. This is a 4-cost that doesn't play a unit but draws 3. Mostly I think this is too slow, just like Tarkin is. It's hard to play 4 for no immediate effect. As a late game engine, it's pretty decent. I think maybe as a sideboard card into control decks where like we really go into like card quantity sort of situations where that matters a lot, then this could see some more play, but I'm not super high on it. Warzone Lieutenant is a 1-cost 2/2 trooper. It is not good. Kira's Heavy Fighter is a 3/3 for 4 in green. It has Overwhelm, and on attack you may exhaust another friendly unit. If you do, give this +3/+0. This is also not very good. Discerning Veteran, 5-cost 3/4. When played, this unit captures a non-leader ground unit. I think it's probably one of the weaker capture things just because its stats are so weak for 5 cost that like it's going to be hard to imagine they can't immediately remove it for less than 5, at which point you've traded down and lost a lot of tempo. Legal Authority, however, 2-cost upgrade. You put it on a friendly unit, any friendly unit. The attached unit captures an enemy non-leader with less power than it. So this can capture across zones as well. And the unit gets +0/+2, which is nice because it's capturing something and now it's harder to remove. But it's not puffing the power, and the condition on this is to capture something with less power. It's not even less than or equal to. So it is limited to how big the stuff it can capture is, but it only costs 2. It does give you a nice little buff. I think this card is pretty good, especially if you play it on a leader that already has a lot of health. And I think this can make the cut as far as capture cards are concerned. Temporary removal, right? It's not forever, so think bounce, right? Temporary. Whereas bounce, they can replay it immediately. Here they can't, but they do get it back for free once they are able to remove whatever is holding captive their unit. Outflank, 1-cost, attack with 2 units, 1 at a time. So this is the same effect similar as like Rebel Assault from the first set, except Rebel Assault naturally only worked with rebels, but also buffed them. I mean, I don't think it's quite good enough. I think a big part of why Rebel Assault is good is that the card also basically fronts you 2 damage whenever it goes off. Here you're not getting that. As such, I think the power level is a little diminished. Moment of Glory, 3 cost, give a unit +4/+4 for this phase. It's like a giant tactical advantage. I think you'd want to set up some kind of combos with this, maybe with like Admiral Mahdi, so like the unit can attack twice in one turn. That actually seems pretty appealing because it's +4/+4. Whatever you put this on is unlikely to get removed that turn. So I think as far as like a combo card, this could do it. Especially if you're trying to do some like OTK things, one turn kill stuff. I think this is interesting. It's similar to like Attack Pattern Delta, which gives 3 units, like +1/+1/+2/+2/+3/3. This front load, this is like giving you 2 parts of that ability onto 1 unit, which I think is actually decent somehow. I think obviously you need to build around this very heavily, and I don't know if like that kind of deck will ever really exist, but we will try. Incinerator Trooper, 2 cost 2/2 Imperial Trooper. In villain, while attacking, this unit deals damage before the defender, so it's kind of like built-in shoot first on this unit. So the bad here, 2 cost 2/2. That's bad. The good news here is that that ability on it is really strong. Grand Moff in particular buffs his units +1 power whenever they attack a unit, so this will attack as a 3 power, which all of a sudden is really interesting on a turn 1 play because it can kill basically anything with his ability on the first turn. However, this card's power severely diminishes when you are not going first in these situations. It's very easy to remove. You're going to want to buff this, but I still think the floor is too low for me, although the ceiling is quite high. I think it'll be a pretty swingy card, but I'm not very high on it right now. Protector of the Throne is a 3 cost 2/4 Mandalorian. When it's upgraded, it has Sentinel. I don't think it's very good. I know there was a +1/+3 Mandalorian upgrade. It also gives shield if the unit is Mandalorian. So like this would become a 3/7 Sentinel, which is nice. But overall, I think it requires too much. The floor, again, is very, very low. It'll get blown out by stuff, right? Because you kind of have to upgrade this for it to do anything. I don't like it. All right, Survivor's Gauntlet is a rare. It's a 5 cost 4/6 vehicle. It's a Mandalorian vehicle. Okay, when played and on attack, you may attach an upgrade on a unit to another eligible unit controlled by the same player. So you can kind of move upgrades around as long as they are eligible. I think there's like a few things that are interesting, right? Like upside here. You've got a unit, it's got some lightsaber on it. You attack with that unit. You play this, you move that lightsaber into another unit that hasn't attacked. You get like a second activation. On like smaller scale, you can do that with experience tokens. You can move shields around. You can like mess a little bit with your opponent's stuff. It does move Traitorous off of a unit, so like it is a counter to Traitorous, although this costs 5. It's a lot to like counter Traitorous when you can do that with way cheaper cards. You can like move bounties around from your units, or they put a bounty on one of your cheap units that they can kill easily. You can like move the bounty onto this, for instance. Then all of a sudden, maybe they can't capitalize. It's decently statted for a space unit, but all in all, I still just like don't know how much I want to be playing something like this. I think it's still situational with its effect. I think a lot of the time this won't do very much on play, and I'm very much of the belief that if you are playing 5 cost cards, they better have a big impact when you play them. That's just what the game is right now. The 5 cost units that see play either have immediate effect or do something really, really busted when you play them with Energy Conversion Lab, which again turns them into immediate effects. Immediate effects, we talk about Sentinel, Ambush, some like built-in removal, right? Mostly, this immediate effect seems low impact enough to me. That doesn't excite me that much. But we are in this like really heavy upgrade synergy set, and this might like do some really cool stuff. It's a wait and see kind of card for me. Clan Ren Rescuer is a 2 cost blue hero card. It's a 1/2 when played, give an experience token to a unit. So the floor is a 2 cost 2/3 because it can give itself the experience. The upside here is that like one of that power can be played onto like a readied unit, so like you can get immediate effect there. That experience is an upgrade, so any of their units that like matter when they're upgraded. We just talked about that 2/4 that gets Sentinel when it's upgraded. There's the 1/3 for 2 that gets an extra +1/+1 when it's upgraded. We can see what the theme is here. I'm still waiting for like more busted things to happen when like you upgrade them, right? Right now, the cards that seem to get benefited from it aren't high enough rate for me in the first place to want to build around them. But if you give me some build arounds, like some really, really interesting cards that get really busted when they get upgrades, this is actually a card I would be pretty interested in because it's cheap and it gives you the value immediately, and it leaves behind a little annoying 1/2. It's okay right now, pretty average, but we'll see if how important this ability ends up being. Foundling, 1 cost +1/+1 attached unit gains the Mandalorian trait. I mean, I think probably for draft, just to like, if you get Mandalorian synergy, you do this. The cards you'll play in constructed, if you're playing Mandalorian stuff, you're just going to play Mandalorians. You're not going to like put this in your deck to like make your things Mandalorian. Oh, Mandalorian armor. Crazy. I talked about this card because I thought I did this in a previous review. We're going to talk about it now. It's a 2 cost attached to a non-vehicle. When played, if it's a Mandalorian, give it a shield, and it gives +1/+3. I think mostly the only way I would want to play something like this is, again, if the unit has Sentinel and is already a decent rate unit, right? +1/+3 is not actually a very good stat line, and even if you give it a shield, the issue here is that like your opponent can mostly ignore that unit. It's not going to pose much of a threat because the stat weight on this is very defensive. The shield is pretty defensive. You're going to need to start jamming your unit a bunch into their units to get value off of this, but you're probably not going to be doing that much damage in the first place. So look for Sentinels. Look for cheap, good Mandalorian Sentinels, not the 3 cost 2/4 that gets Sentinel if you put this on it. Like, we want something better than that, but then this might be interesting. Mandalorian Warriors, a neutral card, 3 cost, 3/3. When played, give an experience token to another Mandalorian unit. Somehow it's actually not that embarrassing for a neutral card. It's like half a Fleet Lieutenant, half a Wing Leader, right? It's got the Fleet Lieutenant stats, but also gets half of the Wing Leader's ability. This actually seems like really, really strong in draft for me. I think likely the power level is not quite there for constructed, but I'm just surprised at how like almost playable this looks to me as a neutral card. Public Enemy is a 0 cost bounty. I mean, we like 0. Let's see what it does. Attach unit, gains bounty, give a shield token to a unit. Yeah, probably not playing this one. Fell the Dragon, 4 cost. Defeat a non-leader unit with 5 or more power. It's more removal options. It's meant to kill big things, which is usually what Vanquish does, except this does it for 1 cheaper. I'm aware that Vanquish will kill the situational things that you need that have like 4 power. Let's like Obi-Wan, right? Obi-Wan costs 6. He's a 4/6. This can't kill it. But overall, I like this more than Vanquish for most situations where I'd be running Vanquish. It kills Fett's Fire Spray for 1 cheaper than Vanquish, which is like kind of the first place I'm looking at because that card is really annoying sometimes. And 4 cost means you're now getting a 2 cost discount when killing it. It might mean you can deploy after killing it, which is a pretty big deal. I don't think you're going to be jamming 3 of this in every deck, but right now, I think most decks that I'm playing Vanquish, I would likely shift to this and see how that does. Rich Reward, 1 cost, neutral bounty. Attached unit gets bounty, give an experience token to each of up to 2 units. So the absolute upside here is 1 cost to get 2 experience on 2 different units. We are not playing this card either. New leader, Hondo Onaka, villain green. He is a 6 cost deploy. His front leader ability, when you play a card using Smuggle, you may exhaust the leader to give an experience token to any unit. The deploy side, he now gets raid, and then the ability is the same, except it's no longer capped to 1 a turn because you don't need to exhaust it. So when you play a Smuggle, give an experience token to a unit. It's a Smuggle build around. Basically, all your Smuggle cards now come with a front-loaded experience token onto any unit, which is pretty strong. I so far don't see like a ton of Smuggle cards that I think are very good. So like I'm not trying, like so far I don't see a deck that's going to be like 30 smuggle cards. On top of that, he's a 3/7 for 6. I know he's got raid 1. This seems to me more of like a draft build around leader so far. I think in draft it will be pretty strong because that experience combat math is going to be pretty important. I don't think this looks to be like a very pushed constructed leader. Scanning Officer, 2 cost, Imperial Official. Official's important again. 2/3. When played, reveal 3 enemy resources. Defeat each resource with the smuggle keyword revealed this way. For each resource defeated this way, its controller puts the top card of their deck into play as a resource. So I'm going to rant a lot about this card. So first, the good, obviously. The floor is not terrible. It's a 2/3. It's a green neutral card. It's got Imperial, it's got Official. So Imperial matters for Imperial synergy. Official matters a lot as a 2-cost unit. That then curves into Emperor's Royal Guard for Palpatine. Now, the reveal 3 enemy resources to defeat the smuggle is all fine and dandy. My issue here is that when it defeats those smuggle cards, the new resources will come into play exhausted, as all new resources always come into play exhausted. Essentially, this has the potential to completely like destroy an opponent's turn. If you hit 1, 2, or 3 of their resources, you can like basically make it so they can't play cards that turn, or like most of their cards, right? You're exhausting their resources. I think that's like potentially problematic if like there is a deck that's playing a ton of smuggle cards, right? I think you basically can't play a deck that has a ton of smuggle cards because of this. Now, the power level on this, I'm not sure is the really broken part. I think you'll have to like know this exists, and you'll have to play around it. You won't be able to just like, if you're going second, you can't just like put 2 smuggle cards down, because if they play this on turn 1, you just miss your first turn now. They exhaust both your resources. The bigger issue here I see is the logistics of this. Basically, whenever you're playing against green, the correct thing now is going to be to constantly be looking at your resources. Whenever you pay for cards, you're going to need to exhaust your smuggle cards first, so that you can't like got real hard by this. But then now, because your opponent knows which resources you exhausted, they're probably going to keep track of that. So they're going to know which of your cards are smuggle cards. So now the correct next level thing to do is basically every turn reorganize your resources so that like your opponent doesn't know. And you're going to rinse and repeat this every turn when you're playing against green. Like, I don't expect you're going to do this at your local, but at a big cash event, like, trust me, the correct thing to do every turn is going to be look at all your resources, know where your smuggle cards are, use those to pay for cards first. On your regroup phase, mix up all your resources so your opponent doesn't know where they are anymore. And again, rinse and repeat. Look, I don't like that play pattern. It's going to be really annoying in general, I think. And I think that's all enabled not by the power level really of this card. It's just like its mere existence means that you now need to play around its potential blowout effect, right? It's going to be absolutely game ending if your opponent plays this and nukes some of your readied resources and exhausts them. That could like straight up just lose you a game. And in a big tournament, you're not going to be able to take that risk. You're going to need to start messing around with your resource row. I don't love that play pattern. But yeah, this card's pretty good. I think like the floor is high enough, especially in like a Palpatine deck where the official trait matters. And we'll see if like how much this tension for smuggle decks will matter, right? Like Lando, he needs to play smuggle cards. That's the whole point of his deck. If this card is prominent enough where like it's going to start nuking your resources, potentially like be completely game ending if they nuke ready resources, potentially even be devastating if they nuke exhausted resources and like you can't play your Falcon, right? Because they just blew it up from your resource row. Yeah, I think yeah, that's the end of my rant. We'll see like what ends up happening. Maybe I'm too much doom and gloom about this. I just really don't like the play pattern it's going to encourage with like the resource management and like the shuffling and reorganizing every turn. Reckless Gunslinger is a 1-cost 2/1 in red. It has Underworld. Again, 1-cost Underworld I like from MClunky. It has a when played deal 1 damage to each base, so that's really cool. That's like some reach for aggressive decks, and it has Smuggle for 3. This card is a pretty good package, all in all. It's an acceptable turn 1 play sometimes, especially if you have a lot of 1-drops. It's also an acceptable play just because it's like later in the game as reach, right? You're doing damage directly. There's not a lot of cards that do that, and sometimes if you play 1 or 2 of these, that might be the difference between winning and losing a game. And the really exciting part too is that it's reach from your Smuggler row, so it's not from your resource row. So for 3, right, you're paying 3 to deal 1 to your opponent's base. It's not like super exciting, but late in the game, that might be all that matters. It's got decent synergy with Fighters for Freedom, right? Because now, as a red card, it also deals an extra damage from that. I like it, and I'm specifically looking again to play this with yellow, where you can play MClunky. Bounce this back to your hand, kill one of their units is also really cool. All right, Zori Bliss. This is another card I was talking about for Lando. It's a 5-cost 4/7 in hero yellow. On attack, draw a card at the start of the regroup phase. Discard a card from your hand. The regroup phase, at the start. So it's before you draw your next card. So again, if you're empty-handed, you won't have to discard a card. I think that's mostly rare that's going to happen. So really, this ability is filtering, right? You draw, you'll discard. You're not getting card quantity. You are getting some card quality. So the interesting thing here for me is the Smuggle. It costs 6, so it's only 1 up from the normal cost, which means with Lando, it costs 4. 4-cost 4/7. Way more appealing to me than 5-cost 4/7. I don't like this card as on its flat and it's like front side. Again, I always talk about 5-cost. You need immediate impact. This card does absolutely nothing when you play it for 5. It's a 4/7 that has like mostly a pretty weak on attack effect. I don't think the on attack ability is particularly good. It's like fine, right? It's some card selection. It's not super exciting. There's a big difference though when this comes out on 4 as a 4/7. 4/7 for 4 is really, really pushed stats, right? I like 4/5s for 4, like Kanan. This is bigger than Kanan by a decent amount, and that's where I'm looking to play this card. It would be in Lando, and it would probably be in nowhere else. Unless, of course, Smuggle for 6 is also decent for it. It might be, right? Like, we talked about Falcon as a Smuggle card outside of Lando decks, just to have, like, backup plans, cards to play from your resource row. Maybe it's good enough there as, like, a backup plan, but this looks like a Lando build around to me. Warbird Stowaway is a villain green card. It costs 3. It's a 2/3 Underworld. When you have initiative, +2/+0. Smuggle for 4. This card's not very good. Armed to the Teeth is a 2-cost red upgrade. Attach unit gains on attack. Give another friendly unit +2/+0 for this phase. And it also has Smuggle for 4. And the upgraded unit also has +2/+0. So there's a lot of upside here because it can be +4 damage the turn you play it. There's also a lot of downside here. It doesn't give any defense. It requires multiple actions to get any of the payoffs from it. It having Smuggle is interesting because, again, anything with Smuggle is basically drawing you a card. I think there's a high ceiling here, a very low floor. I'm not super high on it. Again, I think it looks a bit to me like the Benthic 2 Tubes card, which is really pushed out from most decks as being too situational. This, similarly, you're going to put it on a unit. That unit needs to like survive an action to get its attack off. And then the other unit that you buff needs to survive to get its 2 attack off. I think there's a lot of steps required for this to be good. And it's interesting, though, because of how much upside it does have. To potentially be a 2-cost deal 4 is strong. We'll play around with it and see if we're able to get it to do the thing. All right, that's it. It was another really long review. I hope they will get shorter. I think this week might have been the last like week that's going to be like 30 plus cards, just because the whole starter decks were revealed. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any difference of opinion on any of the cards. Interested to hear your takes. I'm not right all the time. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out some of the other videos. And until next time, take care.